Hi, everyone. Tanya Hertz here. I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about how we can gauge whether a leader is a good leader or a bad leader. And so we're going to look at leader behavior. And we're going to particularly take a look at um, at the chapter or the module on leadership behavior, and we're going to look at behavior for that. Why is this not working? For the reason that I said, that we're trying to differentiate between good leaders and bad leaders. And the reason that we look at behavior to do this is because behavior can be observed, behavior can be measured. And it's not as easy to measure things like personality traits, like values, like intelligence. There is a correlation. They contribute to effective leadership behavior, but very, very difficult to then observe and then make inferences based on our observations. You can look at behaviors, though, and very easily make inferences. And why do we do this? Well, because it's important. And people are not good leaders. There are more people that are bad at leadership than good, more people in positions of power. And I think all of us, if we have any job history, have worked for these kinds of people. And it's not fun. It's not fun working in organizations that don't have a focus on the human resources in their company and motivating and inspiring them, or just working for bad people who just aren't good at it. And there's a lot of reasons why people aren't good at leadership. They may not understand that there is a correlation between the job performance and commitment and their behavior. They just don't get the negative impact of their behavior, rather. And so it's important. Education is important. We need to make sure that we're focusing on this. And leadership behaviors, we know, are correlated with success as a leader, but it's an indirect correlation. And the sort of component that's missing, the variable that makes it direct, are things like intelligence, personality traits, emotional intelligence, values, attitudes, et cetera, et cetera. And with enough time, leaders can discern which is appropriate and which is an ineffective behavior. And of course, there are other variables that come into play, and we're not going to look at all of them, but remember always that there's those three overarching components of leadership, and those are the leaders, the followers, and the situation. And so keep that in mind as well. All right, so let's start by looking at some early studies on leadership and leadership behavior. The first, sorry about that. The first study that we look at there was done on several organizations. There were over 1,000 companies that were part of this study, and it was actually, I have the exact numbers here. Let me pull them up. So there were 1,800 questionnaires, and they described different types of leadership behavior. There were statements, and the statements were used to develop this LBDQ, the Leader Behavior Description Questionnaire. It's been around since the 1980s. It's evolved many times since it was first administered, and thousands and thousands of responses now have been collected since the initial study. Leader behavior, as a result, was broken down into two categories: consideration and initiating structures. And these are dimensions, and they're independent of each other, and they're on continuums, so they're not black and white. It's not yes or no. And the two separate continuums are, first, consideration, so how friendly the leader is, how supportive, how kind, how much they show concern towards other people, and look out for their subordinates, not themselves, and express appreciation for their subordinates' work. And then there's the initiating structures of leadership. So how much the leader emphasizes the work itself, the task associated goals, right? Task related behaviors. So leaders that are high in consideration, really focus on making people feel good at work and happy at work and valued. Whereas people who are score high in initiating structure will spend a lot of their time on task-related behaviors like assigning the work, focusing on deadlines, monitoring the actual work itself. And just because you're high in one does not mean that you're low in the other. You can be high in both or low in both or any combination thereof. And there have been many studies since then. Another study that was that's really kind of a cornerstone, and it's based on the LBDQ, is it's a job performance study. It was done by the University of Michigan, and it focuses on 4 dimensions. There are goal emphasis, work facilitation, and then there's leader support, and then employee-centered dimensions. So leader support and interaction facilitation. So we'll go through each of them, I believe. Yeah. So there, actually, no, I don't think that we have separate slides on these. Let me see here. Yeah, so I should probably cover them right here. Okay, so then the job centered and the employee centered are on 2 opposite ends of a single continuum, and both of these studies essentially have similar dimensions. They're just named a little bit differently, and this was actually the LBDQ was used to create this one. So goal emphasis. Goal emphasis is motivating workers to complete the tasks at hand. So work facilitation are behaviors that are concerned with clarifying roles, acquiring and allocating resources, reconciling conflicts at work, things like this. Leader support are behaviors where the leaders show concern for subordinates. Interaction facilitation are behaviors where the leaders minimize conflict among their followers. So I think it's pretty easy to see the employee-centered are like the consideration dimensions from the LBDQ, whereas the goal and work facilitation tend to be much more like the initiating structure. Okay. All right. So the leadership grid came out of these early findings from the Ohio State and University of Michigan studies. And but unlike them, those were more like what leaders actually do, the behaviors. But the leadership grid went a little bit further because it didn't just look at the behaviors. It looked at it just was a little bit more user friendly. It took those behaviors and translated them into things that we could look at and say this is successful in leadership, or this is not successful. So it basically, the leadership grid essentially took those right, the indirect correlations, and then made them into actually predictive correlative outcomes. I think that I might have confused you more by saying that, but anyways, this is what the grid looks like, right? You can score either high or low in both concern for people or concern for results, and you can be either effective or ineffective as a leader, essentially. So again, it takes those 1980s studies, this was in the 90s, and turned them from behaviors into actually how successful are you, right? Are you good at being concerned about people or being concerned about the work results? Right? All right. So moving on. The competency models. Competency models are a way that we can describe the behaviors and the skills that are actually needed for success. And most organizations have competency models for different levels of management, for different positions in the company. And all of those competency models fall into one of 4 categories: interpersonal, intrapersonal, leadership, and business skills. So intrapersonal skills, inside, include things like being adaptable to stress, setting goals. And these are intra means inside of ourselves, right? So these do not have to do with dealing with other people, but ourselves as human beings. Interpersonal skills are communicating or interacting with other people. And these are actually easier to change than the ones that we than the intra, ourselves. So leadership skills are concerned with building effective teams, getting results from other people. These are even easier to develop than the first two. And then business skills are the skills and competencies that are that you learn in MBA programs and bachelor of science degrees and even undergraduate degrees. And these include things like strategic thinking, analyzing issues, making decisions, being financially savvy, the normal components of a business degree. And of all four of these are the easiest, absolute easiest to change, and can be altered with even a weekend training program. So let's go ahead and stop there. We'll do the rest on the next video. I keep turning my camera off. I apologize. I have not great bandwidth here, but anyways, we'll see you at the next video.